The text from my brother Marcus arrived at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday. Easter brunch is family only. Don't come. My new boss Richard Chin will be there with his wife. Your retail job would honestly be embarrassing. Mom agrees. We're trying to make a good impression. I stared at my phone in my corner office on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown stretched out like a circuit board of lights. My executive assistant had left the Wall Street Journal on my desk, the one with my face on page 3. Tech's quiet disruptor. How Maya Torres built CloudSync into a $340 million enterprise. I replied with one word, okay. Marcus didn't know. None of them knew. For 3 years I'd let my family believe I was still working retail at the electronics store where I'd started at 19. I'd let them dismiss me, patronize me, exclude me from their social climbing. What would you do if your family was about to humiliate themselves in front of the person who could end their career? Drop a comment below. But Richard Chin wasn't just Marcus's new boss. Richard Chin was my vice president of strategic partnerships. And Monday morning at 9 a.m. he had a quarterly board meeting. At my company. With me at the head of the table. I forwarded Marcus's text to my lawyer with a simple note. Documentation. Just in case. Then I went back to reviewing Q1 projections. Growing up as the youngest of 3 kids in the Torres family meant living in the shadow of Marcus's achievements. He was the golden child, varsity captain, debate team president, early admission to Stanford Business School. Our sister Jennifer was the social star, sorority president, married to a cardiologist, 2 perfect kids in private school. Then there was me. The surprise baby, who arrived when mom was 41 and dad was 44. The one who didn't quite fit the family's upward trajectory. Maya's more practical. Mom would say at family gatherings, her tone making practical sound like simple. Not everyone is meant for corporate success. I'd started working at Tech Hub Electronics at 19, right after my first year of community college. The family treated it like a personal failure. Jennifer suggested I might find a nice man to settle down with, instead of struggling in retail. Marcus offered to get me an interview for a receptionist position at his consulting firm. Entry-level obviously, but better than retail. What they didn't know was that Tech Hub's owner, Gerald Park, was a retired Silicon Valley engineer who saw something in me. While I sold laptops and smartphones to customers during the day, Gerald taught me about systems architecture, cloud computing, and enterprise software in the back office after closing. You've got the mind for this, he'd said one night when I debugged a complex inventory system issue. Have you ever thought about building something? I had. Constantly. By age 22 I'd taken every online course I could find. Computer science, business management, systems design. I'd saved $15,000 from my embarrassing retail job and built the first prototype of CloudSync in Gerald's basement. Enterprise cloud storage with military-grade encryption and AI-powered file management. Gerald became my first investor. $50,000 for 20% equity. I'm betting on you, Maya. Not the idea. You. At family dinners, I'd sit quietly while Marcus bragged about his promotion to senior consultant or Jennifer showed off her new Lexus. When they asked about my job I'd say, same as always. Still at Tech Hub. The dismissive nods. The pitying glances. The way mom would change the subject quickly as if my life was too mundane to discuss. But my life was anything but mundane. By 24, CloudSync had secured 3 Fortune 500 clients. By 26, we'd raised $12 million in series of funding. By 28 we'd been acquired by a larger tech firm, and then bought ourselves back 2 years later when they mismanaged the product. At 31 CloudSync was valued at $340 million. We had 240 employees, offices in 4 cities, and contracts with 18 of the Fortune 100. And I was still telling my family I worked retail. Why? Because the first time I'd mentioned starting a computer business, Marcus had laughed so hard he'd choked on his wine. Maya, you sell phones in a strip mall. That's not exactly Silicon Valley. Jennifer had patted my hand. Sweetie, those online business things are usually scams. You're better off with steady retail income. Dad had been more direct. Focus on what you're good at. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. So I'd stopped telling them. I'd stopped trying to prove myself. I'd let them underestimate me while I built an empire they couldn't comprehend. The only family member who knew was Abuela Rosa, my grandmother, who'd passed away 2 years ago at 94. She'd been at my Series B funding celebration, tiny and fierce in her purple dress, squeezing my hand. "Let them think you're pequeña," she'd whispered in Spanish. "Small. Then show them you're gigante when it matters." I'd kept my promise to her. I'd stayed small. Invisible. The family disappointment. Until Richard Chin accepted my offer to become VP of Strategic Partnerships 6 months ago. Richard was brilliant. Stanford MBA, former McKinsey consultant, incredible network in enterprise sales. I'd recruited him away from a competitor with a $450,000 salary, full benefits and equity options that would be worth millions when we went public. During his interview, Richard had mentioned his wife's Easter brunch tradition. "Big family thing. My wife Sarah loves hosting. She invites our families, some colleagues." "Sounds nice," I'd said neutrally. I'd had no idea that some colleagues would include my brother. Marcus had been hired 2 months ago as a junior account manager at Stratford Consulting, one of CloudSync's clients. Small world. Except I'd deliberately stayed away from that account, letting my sales team handle it. When Marcus mentioned his new boss Richard Chin at Christmas dinner, bragging about working with C-suite executives at major tech companies, I'd simply smiled and asked him to pass the potatoes. "You wouldn't understand corporate dynamics," he'd said with that familiar condescending tone. "It's complex." "I'm sure it is," I'd replied. Jennifer had jumped in. "Marcus is being groomed for partner track. Unlike some people, he's serious about his career." Mom had nodded approvingly. Dad had raised his glass. "To Marcus. The son who made us proud." I'd excused myself early, citing an early shift at the store. In my car I checked my phone. 23 emails about our upcoming board meeting. A text from Richard confirming his Monday morning presentation. A message from our CFO about our preliminary Q1 numbers. Up 47% year over year. I'd driven home to my penthouse, the one my family had never seen, and worked on strategic planning until 2 a.m. That was 3 months ago. Now, with Easter brunch less than 3 days away and Marcus's text burning in my memory, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. Done being small. Done being invisible. Done letting them diminish me while I transformed the tech industry they knew nothing about. Building CloudSync from a basement prototype to a $340 million enterprise hadn't been luck. It had been strategy, sacrifice, and 7 years of 18-hour days. The early years were brutal. While my family slept soundly, assuming I was struggling through retail shifts, I was negotiating with venture capitalists, debugging code, and teaching myself contract law at 3 a.m. because I couldn't afford a lawyer yet. Gerald Park had been my guardian angel. His basement became our first headquarters. 3 folding tables, 6 laptops, and a whiteboard covering an entire wall. "Every billion-dollar company started somewhere ridiculous," he'd laugh. "Might as well be here." Our first major breakthrough came when I cold called the CTO of Redmond Financial, a regional bank struggling with data security. I'd researched their systems for 2 weeks, identified their vulnerabilities, and walked into that meeting with a presentation that made their head of IT physically pale. "How did you find that breach?" he'd asked, staring at my security analysis. "I didn't find it. I predicted it. Your architecture has 3 critical flaws that any skilled hacker could exploit in under 4 hours." We'd signed a $340,000 contract that day. My first 6-figure deal. I was 23 years old. At Thanksgiving that year, when Marcus bragged about his $85,000 consulting salary, I'd stayed quiet. My company had just grossed $1.2 million. The growth was exponential. Each satisfied client led to 3 referrals. Each security feature we developed became industry-leading. By year 3, CloudSync was handling data for hospitals, law firms, government contractors. If you're building something while everyone underestimates you, drop a fire in the comments. You're not alone. The real turning point came when Dr. Patricia Okonkwo joined as our Chief Security Officer. Patricia was a former NSA cryptographer with 20 years of experience and a no-nonsense approach to enterprise security. "Your encryption is good," she'd said during her interview. "But I can make it bulletproof." She did. Within 6 months, CloudSync had government-level security certifications. We started bidding on federal contracts. We won 8 of them. At my 27th birthday dinner, the one my family forgot until I reminded them, Jennifer mentioned her husband's practice was looking for cloud storage. But you probably don't know anything about that. Probably not, I'd agreed. 3 months later, Dr. Morrison's cardiology practice signed with CloudSync through our medical division. Jennifer never made the connection. I'd deliberately kept my name off the client-facing materials. The funding rounds were strategic. Series A, $12 million from Sequoia Capital. Series B, $45 million from Andreessen Horowitz and Khosla Ventures. Series C, $120 million from a consortium including Kleiner Perkins. Each round valued the company higher. Each round diluted my ownership slightly, but I'd structured the deals to maintain 51% voting control. No one could override me. No one could push me out. By 30, I was worth $173 million on paper. On my 30th birthday, my family took me to Olive Garden. "We know money's tight with your retail job," Mom had said, insisting on paying for my meal. I'd thanked her graciously. That morning, I'd closed a $28 million deal with an international manufacturing firm. The Wall Street Journal profile had published 3 weeks ago. The reporter, Amanda Choi, had spent 2 months researching CloudSync's rise. The article detailed everything: the basement start, the strategic pivots, the innovative security features that changed the industry. Maya Torres doesn't just compete in enterprise cloud storage, Amanda had written. She's redefining it. While competitors focus on capacity, CloudSync focuses on intelligence, AI-driven security that predicts breaches before they happen. At 31, Torres has built something remarkable: a company that Fortune 500 CEOs trust with their most sensitive data. The article included a photo of me in my corner office, the city skyline behind me. Professional, powerful, successful. My family never mentioned seeing it. They didn't read the Wall Street Journal's business section. They skimmed headlines about celebrities and political scandals, but they didn't follow tech industry news. Why would they? Their daughter worked retail. Richard Chin had joined CloudSync 6 months ago after I'd spent 3 months recruiting him. His network was incredible: Stanford MBA connections, former McKinsey colleagues, relationships with C-suite executives across a dozen industries. "You're building something special here," he'd said during our final negotiation. "I want to be part of it." I'd offered him equity, a leadership role, and a challenge: help me double our Fortune 100 contracts in 2 years. 18 months, he'd countered with a grin. We'd shaken on it. Richard was brilliant, charismatic, and exactly the kind of strategic hire that would position CloudSync for an eventual IPO. His wife Sarah was equally impressive, a nonprofit director with impeccable social connections. When Richard mentioned his wife's Easter brunch tradition during one of our strategy meetings, I'd nodded politely. Sounds like a lovely tradition. I'd had no idea my brother worked under him, until Marcus's text arrived, dripping with the condescension I'd endured for 31 years. "Your retail job would be embarrassing." I'd smiled at my phone in my corner office. Tuesday's board meeting was going to be interesting. Easter Sunday morning, I stayed home. I worked out in my building's private gym, answered emails from my home office, and reviewed Richard's presentation for Tuesday's board meeting. My phone stayed silent until 1:47 p.m. Then the photos started arriving. Jennifer sent the first one: the Easter brunch table, elegantly set with fresh flowers and china. Beautiful gathering. Family only. Missing one person who wouldn't fit in anyway. Marcus sent the second. Him and Richard Chin both in designer suits holding cocktails. Learning so much from real executives. Some people just have what it takes. Mom sent the third. The whole family gathered around Sarah Chin, Richard's wife, who was laughing at something Dad had said. Such accomplished people. Wish all our children made us this proud. I screenshot each message. Forwarded them to my lawyer. Added them to a folder I'd labeled Documentation, Family. At 3:15 p.m. Marcus sent a video. I almost didn't watch it, but curiosity won. The video showed Richard Chin talking about CloudSync, my company, explaining our innovative security features to the gathered family. My family. Marcus was nodding along like he understood, interjecting with comments about working with tech companies and understanding enterprise solutions. CloudSync is revolutionary, Richard was saying. The CEO is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Young, strategic, ahead of the curve on AI integration. You work with the CEO? Dad asked, impressed. Directly, Richard confirmed. She's extraordinary. Completely transformed how Fortune 500 companies think about data security. Jennifer's voice was sharp. The CEO's a woman? Maya Torres, Richard said. 31 years old. Built the company from nothing. She's probably the most impressive executive I've ever worked with. The video went silent. Then Marcus's voice, condescending. Must be nice having family support. Probably had family money to start with. I replayed that part 3 times. The irony was so perfect it was almost painful. At 6:30 p.m. Marcus sent a final text. Richard said CloudSync is hiring. Obviously too advanced for someone like you, but thought I'd mention it. If you ever want to move past retail. I sat in my penthouse living room, the one with the view of the harbor, the one worth $2.3 million that my family had never seen, and made a decision. Tuesday's board meeting started at 9 a.m. Richard would be there presenting Q1 partnership results. Our CFO would present financials. Our CTO would present product roadmap. And I would sit at the head of the table as I always did in my role as founder and CEO. I'd told my executive assistant to print the Wall Street Journal profile and frame it. Hang it on the boardroom wall behind my usual seat, I'd instructed. Make sure it's visible from the door. I texted my head of security. Tuesday morning board meeting. I'm expecting someone to cause a scene. Be ready. His response was immediate. Always ready, boss. Then I texted my lawyer. Prepare a cease and desist letter. Harassment. Document all messages from family. I want options. Her response came 30 seconds later. Already drafted. Waiting for your signal. I poured myself a glass of wine, a 2015 Bordeaux that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, and raced it to the empty room. See you Tuesday, Marcus. Monday morning I arrived at CloudSync headquarters at 6:45 a.m. The Meridian Towers lobby was quiet, just security guards and early bird executives heading to their own offices. Morning, Miss Torres, the head security guard greeted me. Morning, James. How's your daughter's college search going? His face lit up. Georgia Tech accepted her. Full ride for engineering. That's wonderful. Send me her information. We have a summer internship program she might be interested in. This was who I was. This was the person my family had never bothered to know. In my office I prepared methodically. Every document organized. Every financial report reviewed. Every talking point refined. My executive assistant, Michelle, arrived at 7:30 with coffee and a knowing look. Big day. Could be interesting. Richard seems nervous about his presentation. Keeps emailing questions about the projections. He'll be fine. Richard always over-prepares. It's why I hired him. Michelle hesitated at the door. Maya. The Wall Street Journal profile is up in the boardroom. Right behind your seat. It's prominent. Good. She smiled. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. At 8:15 I called Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, our Chief Security Officer. Patricia, you're attending the board meeting this morning, correct? Wouldn't miss it. Heard we might have some drama. Possibly. If someone becomes disruptive, I need you to professionally escort them out. You have that presence that makes people comply. Patricia laughed. A deep, authoritative sound. Former NSA, remember? I've escorted senators out of classified briefings. I can handle your family. Thank you. Maya? Whatever happens today, remember, you built this. You earned every inch of this company. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. I swallowed hard. I won't. At 8:45 I walked to the boardroom. The Wall Street Journal profile hung perfectly. My face, the headline, the detailed article about CloudSync's rise. Impossible to miss from the doorway. I sat at the head of the conference table. Checked my phone one last time. Marcus had sent another message at 7 a.m. Another boring day at the retail store for you, I guess. Meanwhile, I'm presenting to actual executives. Different worlds, Maya. Different worlds. I didn't respond. At 8:50 board members began arriving. Our CFO David Chin. No relation to Richard. Our CTO Samantha Rodriguez. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. 2 board advisors from Sequoia Capital. One from Andreessen Horowitz. Drop a comment if you've ever prepared for the moment when someone who underestimated you finally sees the truth. Morning, everyone, I said calmly. Let's have a productive meeting. At 8:57, Richard Chin entered, carrying his laptop and a confident smile. He was dressed impeccably, navy suit, crisp white shirt, probably preparing to impress the board members he'd be presenting to. He looked up from his laptop. Saw me at the head of the table. Saw the Wall Street Journal profile behind me. His face went through a remarkable journey: confusion, recognition, shock, horror, in under 3 seconds. Richard, I said pleasantly. Good morning. Ready for your Q1 presentation? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Why, Torres. That's me, I confirmed. We should probably start. We have a full agenda. The color drained from his face. You're my boss's sister. Half-sister technically. Different mothers. But yes. Your brother said you work retail. He said you work at some electronics store. I smiled. I did. I started there when I was 19. Best decision I ever made. That's where I met Gerald Park, who became my first investor. Richard sat down heavily in his seat. His hands were shaking. Let's begin, I said and opened the meeting. Richard stumbled through his presentation. His usual polish was gone, replaced by nervous stammering and constant glances in my direction. The board members exchanged confused looks. This wasn't the confident VP they were used to seeing. Richard, I said gently when he lost his place for the 3rd time. Take a breath. Your numbers are excellent. Q1 partnerships exceeded projections by 47%. You should be proud. He nodded, swallowed hard, and managed to finish the presentation. David, our CFO, presented next. Revenue up. Operating costs down. Profit margins expanding. CloudSync was performing exceptionally. At 10:15 we took a break. Richard approached my seat immediately. Paya, I need to explain. Nothing to explain, I said calmly. You didn't know. Marcus never mentioned I exist in any professional capacity, did he? He talks about his disappointing sister who works retail and can't get her life together. He says his parents are embarrassed by you. Sounds accurate to his perception. But you're... Richard gestured helplessly at the boardroom, the profile behind me, the financial reports showing a $340 million company. You're this. I'm this, I confirmed. I've been this for 7 years. I just didn't bother correcting my family's assumptions. Why not? I considered the question. Because their assumptions told me everything I needed to know about who they really are. And because building this, I gestured to encompass CloudSync, was more important than winning arguments at family dinners. Richard sat down across from me, his head in his hands. Your brother talked about Easter brunch this morning. He was bragging about how he kept you away because you'd embarrass him in front of me. I saw the text. He has no idea you could fire me right now. Fire him. Destroy both our careers with a single email. I could, I agreed. But that's not who I am. What are you going to do? I pulled out my phone. Showed him the screenshots. The messages. The photos from Easter brunch. The video of him praising CloudSync while my family sat there clueless. I'm going to forward this conversation to Marcus. And then I'm going to let him make his own choices about how he wants to proceed. He can apologize. He cannot apologize. He can double down on his condescension. His choice. Richard looked ill. He'll panic. Probably. He'll call me. Scream at me. Demand to know why I didn't tell him. You didn't know to tell him. Not your fault. My wife. Oh God, my wife. Sarah invited your whole family to Easter brunch. She was so excited to meet Marcus's accomplished parents and sister. She kept asking me why you weren't there. What did you tell her? That you must be busy. I assumed. I thought maybe there was family tension I shouldn't ask about. Smart instinct. At 10:25 we reconvened. The rest of the meeting proceeded smoothly. Product roadmap approved. Budget allocations finalized. Q2 projections reviewed. At 11:47 I adjourned the meeting. Richard lingered as the others left. Maya, I'm sorry. For everything. For not knowing. For being part of whatever your family did to you on Easter. You were a guest at a brunch. You didn't do anything wrong. What happens now? I pulled up Marcus's number. Started typing. Hi Marcus. This is Maya. I work retail. Remember? Just wanted to let you know I met your boss Richard Chin this morning. Great guy. Very professional. We had a really productive board meeting at CloudSync. You know CloudSync, that tech company Richard works for? The one he was telling everyone about at Easter brunch? The one with the brilliant CEO he admires so much. I paused, watching Richard's face pale further. That's my company, Marcus. I'm the CEO. I founded it 7 years ago while you were dismissing me at family dinners. I built it to $340 million while you were suggesting I find a nice man to settle down with. I'm Richard's boss. I control his career. I control the contracts your consulting firm desperately wants to maintain with us. Another pause. Your Easter text suggested I'd be embarrassing. You were right. But the embarrassment isn't mine. Talk soon. I showed the message to Richard. Too harsh. Too harsh. Why, it's perfect. It's controlled. Factual. Devastating. I pressed send. The response came in 42 seconds. My phone exploded with calls. Marcus. 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 Jennifer. Marcus. Dead. Marcus. I declined every call. Then the text started. Marcus, this is a joke. Marcus, you're lying. Marcus, Richard, call me right now. Jennifer, what is Marcus screaming about? Mom, Maya, what did you do to your brother? Marcus, you can't be a C. Marcus, Richard said it's true. Marcus, how is this possible? Dad, we need to talk immediately. Marcus, you let us think you were nothing. I turned to Richard. Would you like to call him? Confirm that yes, I am actually your boss. Richard pulled out his phone slowly. This feels cruel. Does it? More cruel than texting your sister to skip Easter because her job is too low class. He dialed Marcus. I could hear my brother's voice through the speaker, high-pitched and panicked. Richard. Tell me this is a misunderstanding. Tell me Maya isn't actually. She's my boss, Marcus. She's been my boss for 6 months. She founded CloudSync. She's the CEO the Wall Street Journal profiled. She's worth over $100 million. And you told her not to come to Easter because she'd embarrass you. Silence on the other end. Then, you work for my sister? I work for one of the most brilliant executives in tech. Who happens to be your sister? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. You talked about your disappointing sister in retail. You never mentioned her name. I had no way to know you were talking about Maya Torres, my soup. I need to fix this. That's between you and her. Richard hung up. Looked at me with something like awe. You're enjoying this. I'm not enjoying it. I'm ending it. There's a difference. My phone rang again. Marcus. I answered on speaker. Maya, please. Let me explain. Nothing to explain. You told me not to come to Easter. I didn't come. You told me I'd be embarrassing. You were protecting your reputation. I respect that. I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. In 7 years of building this company, you never once asked me a real question about my life. None of you did. You thought I was nothing. You thought I was beneath you. You thought retail was the ceiling of my ambition. I paused. You were wrong. What happens now? To my job? Richard's your VP and I work on his team and our firm has contracts with CloudSync. Your job is fine. Richard's job is fine. Your firm's contracts are fine. I don't punish people professionally for personal issues. That's not how I run my company. The relief in his voice was palpable. Thank you. But Marcus, we're done. Personally. No more family dinners where I'm the disappointment. No more dismissive texts. No more exclusions because I don't meet your standards. We're professional contacts now. Nothing more. Maya, you're my sister. I'm your sister who you told to skip Easter. Who you called embarrassing. Who you've dismissed for a decade while I built an empire. I'm done being small for your comfort. Silence. Then quietly, I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo years of being treated like I'm worthless. I paused. I need to go. Board meetings don't run themselves. I hung up. Richard was staring at me. That was the most controlled demolition of a relationship I've ever witnessed. I learned from the best. You should see how I negotiate with hostile investors. He laughed, slightly hysterical but genuine. Maya Torres. My boss. The retail worker. I'm never living this down, am I? Probably not. But you didn't do anything wrong. Remember that. What about your parents? Jennifer. I checked my phone. 47 missed calls. 63 texts. They'll figure it out eventually. Or they won't. Either way, I'm done explaining myself. By Tuesday evening, the fallout was spectacular. Jennifer called 17 times before I finally answered. Maya, what the hell is happening? Marcus is having a breakdown. Mom's crying. Dad's demanding we all come to dinner to fix this. Fix what exactly? This situation. You being some kind of secret CEO. Making Marcus look like an idiot. I didn't make Marcus look like anything. He sent me a text telling me not to come to Easter because my retail job was too embarrassing. That was his choice. You let us think you were struggling. I let you think whatever you wanted to think. You never asked. None of you ever asked real questions about my life. Because you worked at Tech Hub. You said you worked at Tech Hub. I do work at Tech Hub. Gerald Park, the owner, is on my advisory board. I keep an office there. I mentor his new hires. I just don't work retail at Tech Hub anymore. I haven't for 7 years. That's deceptive. Is it? Or is it strategic privacy from a family that spent a decade making me feel worthless? Jennifer went quiet. Then, we never made you feel worthless. Jennifer, you suggested I find a nice man to settle down with, because retail wasn't a real career. Mom forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. Marcus has called me a disappointment to my face at least a dozen times. Dad toasted the son who made us proud, while I was sitting right there. We were trying to motivate you. You were trying to dismiss me. There's a difference. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you first, drop a red heart below. She hung up. Mom texted at 8:47 p.m. Family dinner Sunday. You will be there. We need to discuss this. I replied, I'm unavailable. Mom, this is not a request. Me, I'm 31 years old. I run a $340 million company. I don't take orders from you anymore. Mom, how dare you speak to me that way? Me, how dare you treat me like a disappointment for a decade while I was changing an industry? She didn't respond. Dad tried a different approach. He called from his office Wednesday morning. Professional. Measured. Maya, I've been thinking about everything. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment of your career path. Perhaps. I kept my voice neutral. You've clearly been successful. More successful than we realized. We'd like to reconnect. Properly acknowledge your achievements. Why now, Dad? Because you're our daughter. Because family matters. Family mattered when you forgot my birthday. Family mattered when you excluded me from Easter. Family mattered when Marcus told me I was too embarrassing to be around his boss. Where was family matters then? We made mistakes. You made choices. Conscious choices to diminish me. To exclude me. To treat me like I was beneath you. What do you want from us? I considered the question. Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore. I stopped waiting for your approval when I signed my first major contract. I stopped needing your validation when Forbes featured me in their 30 under 30 list. I'm done. Maya. We can be cordial at eventual family events. Professional. Distant. But we're not going back to how things were. Because how things were almost destroyed me. I hung up before he could respond. 3 months passed. CloudSync's Q2 numbers exceeded projections by 62%. We signed 8 new Fortune 500 contracts. Richard Chen's partnerships division became the fastest-growing segment of the company. Richard and I never discussed Marcus again. But Sarah Chen, Richard's wife, sent me a handwritten note. Maya, Richard told me everything. I'm horrified by how your family treated you. I'm even more amazed by what you've built. If you ever want to come to brunch, the real kind where everyone actually respects each other, you're always welcome. Sarah. I framed that note. Hung it in my office next to the Wall Street Journal profile. Marcus sent an email in late June. Maya, I've spent 3 months thinking about everything. I was wrong. Not just about Easter but about everything. I spent your whole life treating you like you were less than me. Like success meant climbing the ladder I was climbing. I never bothered to look around and see you were building your own ladder. One that went much higher than mine ever could. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect us to be close. But I wanted you to know. I'm proud of you. I'm in awe of what you've built. And I'm ashamed it took me 31 years and a massive public humiliation to see it. If you ever want to grab coffee, I'm buying. If you never want to see me again, I understand that too. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Forwarded it to my therapist. What do you think? Her response. What do you think? I thought about Abuela Rosa. About her advice to stay pequeña until it mattered. About her pride in my success. Pride that never wavered, never conditioned on anything except me being me. I thought about Gerald Park, who'd seen potential in a 19-year-old retail worker and invested his money and time into helping me become who I was always meant to be. I thought about the 240 employees at CloudSync who depended on me, who trusted me, who built their careers on the foundation I'd created. And I thought about Marcus's text. Your retail job would be embarrassing. I replied to his email. Marcus, I appreciate your email. I believe you're sincere. But rebuilding trust takes time. Years of dismissal don't get erased by one apology. If you're serious about understanding what you did, start here. Therapy. Real therapy. Work through why you needed to diminish me to feel successful. Work through why our parents' approval mattered more than basic human decency toward your sister. If you do that work, actually do it, not just talk about it, we can grab coffee in a year. Maybe 2. Until then, be good at your job. Be kind to the people who report to you. And remember, the person you're dismissing today might be your boss tomorrow. Why? He didn't respond immediately. Good. Meant he was thinking. On the anniversary of that Easter text, 1 year later, I hosted my own brunch. Gerald Park, Patricia Okonkwo, Richard and Sarah Chin, Michelle, my executive assistant, the Sequoia Capital partners who'd believed in me early, 20 people who'd seen my potential before I'd proven it, 20 people who'd invested in me, financially, emotionally, professionally, when I was still just someone with an idea and determination. We raised glasses in my penthouse dining room. The harbor stretched beyond the windows. CloudSync's latest valuation, $6.80, had been announced that morning. To the people who believed, I said. To the people who built, Gerald Park added. To Maya, Patricia declared. Who proved that the best revenge is living well. We drank. We laughed. We celebrated not just success but the journey that made success meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Therapy appointment scheduled. This is harder than I expected. Thank you for pushing me toward it. I smiled. Typed back. Proud of you for trying. Maybe someday we'd have that coffee. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something from the ruins of our relationship. But today I had everything I needed. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment about a time when someone who underestimated you finally saw your true worth. Your story matters. And remember, the people who dismiss you today are just giving you permission to succeed without them. Use that freedom wisely.